Hi, this is a video about how I make my homemade dog food for my nearly toothless dog. My dog has one tooth, had a rough start in life, so even though he could eat kibble or canned food, I don't want him to have to do that. I may have included a little too much information regarding topics like how much I feed, how I adjust his feeding amounts, but the core recipe is pretty easy to grab and it's not difficult to figure everything out even if you don't watch all the way through. Just make sure everything is properly cooked, especially the hamburger. In this video, you're going to learn what goes into the food I make for my dog, how I prepare it, how I store it, and how I serve it, including how much and why. What you're not going to get is a lot of speculation. I did a lot of research on this, and even though every source of information has some bias or another, I tried my best to cull the important information and cherry pick what seems to work. 3 vets will give you 3 different opinions, but every vet I've shown this recipe to has approved it. Don't expect high production value. I don't do this stuff often. I'm just a guy that makes food for his dog. I'm not a video guy. I'm not a voiceover guy. I tried to make it interesting, but at least all the information is here. I use tiny video clips from my phone and pictures, but you'll get all the information you need to make at least a partially informed decision. And speaking of that, don't take my word for anything. Do some homework and for sure talk to your own vet about any recipe you're thinking about making for your dog. Your dog may have special requirements that mine doesn't have. There are 2 reasons why I wanted to start making my own dog food at home. The first is that I've noticed a lot more instances of tainted dog food or tainted dog treats. There are 56 recalls of pet food on the FDA website on the day I did this. One of the most recent was a vitamin pack from China that a lot of dog food producers put into their blend, so a lot of brands were affected. I know it's a small chance that I would get food from a tainted batch, but I'm just not prepared to take that chance. The second reason is that my dog came from a hoarding situation. He was one of 61 animals rescued by an animal control raid on a property in Northern California around 3 years ago. When he was removed from the property, he was 12 pounds. He spent 9 months in the animal shelter because the courts consider the animals evidence rather than victims, so the shelter wasn't allowed to adopt the animals out until the trial was over. When I got him, the shelter had him up to 15.5 pounds or so. Poor little guy just looked defeated. During his time at the hoarders and at the shelter, he received no treatment for his dental issues. His malnourishment led to some bone loss in his jaws, and his teeth were basically shot. He had half of his teeth when I got him and lost 2 more before I had the rest extracted. Most had holes clear through them, and the rest were infected under the gum line. Little guy was in pain every day, and eating was torturous. After the extractions, he's been a happier dog. He gets excited at mealtime, he sleeps better and deeper, and his breath doesn't smell like a porta potty. Now he's up to a pretty healthy 20 pounds. Sometimes it's 21 pounds and he's a bit chunky, but it's okay. I know I spoil him rotten by sharing my food and treats, but I think he's earned it. Now, if you do a Google search for homemade dog food, you get around 1,280,000,000 hits. Super helpful. So I started doing some homework. I did my reading. I tried a recipe or 2. I read some websites by veterinarians and by animal nutritionists, and I spoke with several local vets. Now here's the recipe I put together that seems to be nutritionally sound. He does love it. He gets so excited for meals now. Not only do his teeth not hurt, but he has real food that he loves. Here's what I'm shooting for. 68% meat, 7% organ meat, 15% veggies, 10% carbs. That's the target. I keep everything in an Excel spreadsheet, so as I add or change an ingredient's quantity, I can see how it affects the percentages, and I can adjust whatever I need to try to hit these targets. So for meat, he gets 90-10 ground beef, ground turkey, boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and canned salmon. The reason some weights say approximately is that I buy most of it at Sam's Club, and the chicken thighs are sold in packs of around 5 pounds. Some's a little under, some's a little over. I just get the biggest one. Same with the hamburger. It comes in a tube that's around 10 pounds. I just get the biggest ones. And I have noticed a difference in his coat from including the salmon. So I guess those omega-3 oils have a positive effect. At least I think so. Now for organ meat, I use beef liver, beef kidney, and beef heart. I'd love to put beef spleen in there, but I can't find any around here. So normally I use 8 ounces of liver, 1 beef kidney, and shore up the percentage with heart. This time I'm only using 4 ounces of liver because I have some heart I want to use up before it gets too old. I get my liver and kidney at Ranch Market, and Winco meat area usually has beef heart. Veggies are sweet potatoes, carrots, green beans, peas, spinach, and pumpkin puree. The pumpkin does something in their digestive tract that makes their excrement less appetizing to the animal. I don't really know what could possibly be less appetizing than dog excrement, but the pumpkin is supposed to make it less appealing to the dog. So make sure you get pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie filling. If the ingredients have anything other than pumpkin, that's not it. Carbs is just brown rice. Some additional things that I add for various benefits: blueberries, Greek yogurt, soft-boiled eggs, coconut oil, turmeric, pepper, a calcium supplement, and a vitamin supplement. I'll show you how to make the calcium supplement and where I get my vitamin supplement. I use an electronic pressure cooker for this. You don't have to, but if you don't, just make certain everything is properly cooked. I got this at Goodwill and I only make dog food with it so far. It's pretty big. I don't fill it to capacity, but it's nice that there's room if I need to. Also, I got these busboy bins at Sam's Club. They're good for mixing the food up. Just get in there and use my hands to mush everything up. But you could use a 5-gallon food grade plastic bucket and a sterilized paint stirrer with an electric drill to do the same job. Probably better. Next time I think I'm going to try using an electric egg beater and see how that goes. You're going to need a chopper. A blender would be nice too. I need both. You need to puree or chop the liver, kidney, heart, salmon, and chicken thighs. For the organs, you can puree them before you cook them or chop them after you cook them. Same difference. My chopper is pretty tiny, and I found a good deal on a little bigger one from Amazon, so I'm going to see how that one pans out today. Since I only use the pressure cooker to make dog food, it sits a while between batches. So after I give it a good cleaning, I run some water through it for one cycle just to sterilize it. Set the timer, forget it. Now it does this little pattern while it's building up pressure and heating up. The colder the ingredients, the longer it takes to heat up and build pressure. It takes the longest with the frozen veggies. Cook things in any order, it doesn't really matter. But once it gets up to temperature, then it displays the cooking time remaining and starts counting down. There it goes. Now, so the first thing I usually cook is the veggies. So carrots, some frozen peas, frozen green beans, frozen spinach. Not a lot, a little goes a long way. Scrub the sweet potatoes, but don't peel or skin them. Chop and weigh out the sweet potatoes. The chunks don't have to be tiny, they'll cook just fine. I usually put the potatoes on the bottom, add the rice, and then the frozen veggies. Then add enough water to cover everything. Set it for 10 minutes. And it's going to take 25 or 30 minutes because it's got to heat up all the frozen veggies before it can start to generate pressure. Be careful when you're releasing pressure when it's done cooking. The steam is hot, it can and will burn you. Protect yourself when releasing the pressure or use something to open the pressure valve from a distance. The veggies and rice are done. Just scoop it out, put it into the busboy bin or whatever you're using. I'm using a little straining scooper to do that. I add a little more water and put in the boneless, skinless chicken thighs. The rice soaked up all the water, so a little bit more is necessary. If you're wondering why I use bottled water, it's because I'm on a well and the water is very, very hard. I don't have a water softener, so I'm not going to subject the dog to that. I do all my cooking with bottled water and he gets bottled water for drinking. A little more water to cover everything. This is the last time I'll need to add water. Set it for 15 minutes. Let it go. Now here's how I make my soft-boiled eggs. Boil the water, put the eggs in, then set a timer for 6 minutes and 15 seconds. In the meantime, fill the sink with cold water. I use a straining pot like a noodle cooker or a steamer. When the timer goes off, take the eggs out, put them into the cold water bath. When they cool off, peel them and either toss them into the busboy bin or get ready to, and keep the shells. Dump in the pumpkin puree. Now this can had a little dent in it right where I tried to start using the can opener, so I had to do that over again. I would have re-recorded that, but you only use one can in the recipe and, well, that's what you get. Now I dump in the eggs and the blueberries. Now I've rinsed off these blueberries and I've gone through them all to make sure that there's no stems. I've removed any stems that were on blueberries or laying around. I don't want that to be an issue for the dog. Puree the salmon in the chopper. Now canned salmon is fully cooked and the bones are safe to eat as is if you have teeth. My dog doesn't. So I puree it to make sure there's no little bones to give him any trouble. The omega-3 oils are good for his coat and the bones give him a little extra shot of calcium. And I don't mess around with this. I grind this stuff until it's a paste. Now the eggshells. Wash the eggshells, put them in boiling water. I save eggshells from breakfast too. I wash them, stick them in some Tupperware, and put them in the fridge until I'm doing a batch of dog food. Throw those in too. Boil them for 10 minutes. Strain them, put them on a baking sheet or a tray, and into an oven for 20 minutes at 200 degrees. I just use the toaster oven because I'm not doing 50 at a time. When they come out of the oven, they'll be dry and brittle. Now this is what I already had on hand, and then I'm adding from the chopper, the ones I just did. I tried to use the chopper, but it only gets them to little bits, not a fine powder, so I got to put them in the blender and use the blender. I pulse and blend until I get a nice fine powder. That's what you want. Now when I take the lid off, you see that little puff of, looks like smoke, looks like a London morning in there. That's exactly what you're looking for. That tells you you're on the right trail. That's your calcium supplement. Now turmeric has a lot of health benefits, but a little bit goes a very long way, and I don't want them to taste it. So just 1 teaspoon in the whole batch is all it's going to take. Now turmeric is supercharged when you use it with black pepper. For some reason, ground black pepper just helps turmeric do its thing even better. So just a half a teaspoon of that. Again, it's not enough for him to taste it, but it's enough to reap some of the benefits. Now this is the calcium supplement we made. Now you see I'm using 3 tablespoons. I would not normally do that. Usually I just put in 1. The reason I'm using 3 right now is because his teeth were extracted fairly recently, and his jawbone is still trying to re-solidify and heal from that. So I want to give him all the calcium I think he can bear to get that done. I'm just trying to hedge my bets. I hope it works. I use 2 packages of a vitamin supplement that I get from the farmer's dog. They recommend 4 or 6, but since this recipe is pretty nutritionally sound anyway, I only use 2 just to make sure he's getting some of the little stuff it might be missing, like maybe magnesium and selenium. 3 tablespoons of coconut oil or whatever healthy fat that you like. Sorry about the noise. That's the pressure cooker is venting. I told you I don't do this much. I'm a lousy director. Quiet on the set. Pressure cooker. Quiet. Oh, thank you. All right. Move on. 1 beef kidney. Beef liver. 4 ounces this time. Usually I do 8. Some beef heart. I'm trying to use this before it gets too old. Usually I would use the liver, the kidney, and then shore up the percentages with heart. Turkey and organs into the pot. I cook them at the same time. Like I said before, I usually use 8 ounces of liver and a beef kidney and fill it out with heart, but this time I'm using a little less liver because I have some heart I need to use up. You can use gloves when you mix. I usually don't. I just did this once for the video and I didn't like it. It feels weird. I wash my hands like 20 times while I'm making this food due to handling all the ingredients, so it's not a big deal to get there in there with my hands. And since there's nothing in this food I wouldn't eat, there's no yuck factor for me. So just really get in there and mix up, get the sides and the corners. When I find an egg, I mush it. A clump, I break it up. A carrot, I mash that. I mush up the berries too. As I said before, you could use a bucket and a paint mixer on an electric drill to do this. I'm going to try a hand mixer next time just to see how that goes. Chop the cooked chicken, toss it in the bin. I cook about half the hamburger at a time. Ground beef is really dense, so it's difficult to cook it all the way through if there's too much or if the chunks are too big. I slice it to help it cook, and set the pot for 20 minutes. You might get by on 15 minutes if you break it up into small pieces, but it's a lot of meat, so there's no reason to take any chances with it. I cook the organs before I pureed them, so now that they're cooked, it's time for me to chop them up before they go into the bin. "20 ounces of Greek yogurt," and then I do another mix. Now I got the hamburger done. It's time to put it in. Be careful. It's hot, really hot. It's sizzling when it comes out of that pressure cooker. So make sure you let it cool a little bit before you stick your hands in there, if that's what you're doing. Now this is the last mix for me. So really get in there, make sure you incorporate the sides and the corners, mash up any leftover clumps. You can see it's got some texture. It gets most of its texture from the hamburger, the turkey, and the chicken. If it seems a little dry, you can add some liquid from the pot, but I've never had to do that. My boy really likes the consistency and the texture, and it's easy for him to gobble up without teeth. I use a serving spoon to put it into deli containers for freezing. This batch I got 16 32-ounce containers, which lasts 5 to 6 days each. So this is good for up to 3 months depending. Then I weigh it. I tear the scale to an empty container, weigh all the containers, and write down the numbers. Now I keep track of all the calories and everything that goes into it. If there's a nutritional panel, I'll use that and figure out how many calories are in however much I put in. If there's not, then I use a government website to tell me how many calories are in so much beef kidney or sweet potato or whatever. These caps seal really well. They're kind of a pain to get off, which is good. You don't want them to accidentally pop off. Into the freezer they go. Now when I get down to around the last day on a previous container, I'll take one out of the freezer, let it sit on the kitchen counter for maybe 2 or 3 hours, then stick it in the fridge overnight and it's good to go. Once it's thawed, I put it into a small Tupperware that's easier to open and close than the deli containers. By the way, the liquid that's left in the pot, stick that in the fridge for a couple hours. The fat will congeal on the surface. You can take that off and toss it, and then put what's left in the fridge and use it for whatever. I put a few tablespoons of that into a dog dish and freeze it as a treat on hot days. It's got a lot of flavor in it, and it's got little meaty bits in it. He really enjoys it. Now for the numbers. Total calories 20,949, total grams 12,890. Around 1.6 calories per gram for this food. He's a 20-pound sedentary dog. His daily calorie requirement is 300. It's supposed to be 90% from food, 10% from treats, so 270 calories a day. At 1.6 calories per gram, it's 168 grams. I round it down to 160. I'm giving him 80 grams a day. Now you can go online and you can see how much the daily calorie requirement is for a dog of your weight or breed, and his activity level. Obviously, my dog's calorie requirements would be higher if he was herding sheep, but he's not. So I give him 80 grams in the morning, 80 grams in the evening, and adjust. And when I say adjust, I mean this dog is spoiled rotten right to the core. He gets extra treats. I share my food with him. So he gets a lot of extra calories that he shouldn't get, but he does. So I adjust his meals based on that. If he's had a lot of extra food in a day, I'll short one of his meals or maybe both. Sometimes my mom has an issue and she has to go to a skilled nursing facility to recover from something. And when she's in there, she saves breakfast, her bacon, sausage, and eggs. And if lunch is like chicken or a hamburger, she saves that for the dog. So he just pigs out when she's in there. So during those times, I only give him like 60 grams of food in the morning, and then we go visit and see what she's got for him. If she has a lot, I might even short his dinner a little bit. If she doesn't, then when we get home, I'll have a lunch that I know I can share a little bit of food with him to make up for the short breakfast. Also, I will check his weight every couple of weeks and see if he's gaining a little or losing a little. He was gaining a little when I gave him 200 grams a day, so I backed it off, and he was still gaining a little, so I backed it. I'm down to 160, 80 grams morning, 80 grams night, and he seems to be pretty stable. If he starts losing a little weight, I'll move it back up. If he starts gaining some, then I'll back it back down. So just keep track of it and adjust. It's not fixed. Do what's right for your dog. Now, I didn't include the cost of things I already had in the house. So the total cost of the ingredients that I went out and bought was $111.09. At 160 grams a day, that's $1.38 a day. Now that's cheaper than any fresh dog food you can have delivered or buy at the pet store. It may be a bit more than you'd pay for kibble, but it's really good food. I could make a sandwich out of it and it'd be perfectly fine. And I know exactly where it was sourced from, how it was prepared, and how it's stored, and how it's served. When I see people grab a 50-pound bag of kibble at the store, I feel bad for the dog. Now remember those target percentages? Here's what this one wound up being. I was 1 point off from the meat and the veggies and spot on the organ and carbs. So I'm going to pad this out with another 5 pounds of turkey next time, and I'll need to adjust everything else to keep the percentages right. But that's really not bad. I'm pretty spot on. Thank goodness for Excel spreadsheets. I think padding it out with turkey is an option to change it up for a bit for the dog, and maybe stretch the dog food budget even a little bit further. And when I serve it, of course, I weigh it out. So I tear the scale to his dish, and I don't just dig out a chunk. I scrape it off the top with a spoon so it gets a little more like fluffy texture that's easier to eat without teeth. Anyway, so there it is. I hope you learned something, or maybe you have the confidence to try cooking for your dog. I only cook for my dog once every 2 or 3 months, and it's totally worth it. Do a little research. There's a zillion dog food recipes out there, and most have a bias of something or another. You know, some people want your dog to eat raw, and some people want your dog to eat only meat. And just remember that no two vets or animal nutritionists will agree on anything, so your opinion and knowledge of your dog is going to matter a lot. Okay, say hi to your fur baby for me.